How's it going, everybody? David Cloninger with the Charleston Post and Courier and Gamecocks Now here, along with John Blau also from the Post and Courier and the Tiger Take, welcoming you to the final countdown to kickoff of the year. It's rivalry week. Didn't get one of these last year because the pandemic had wiped out a series that had been played for 111 consecutive years. Clemson wanted to play it. The SEC said, no, we can't do that. We got to have 10 all-conference games. So it was wiped out, what have you. But going to be a very interesting matchup this year at 7:30 on November 27th at Williams-Brice Stadium. So I brought in John and myself to talk about each side of the rivalry match coming up. And let me give a strong welcome to John, who's doing a great job for our Clemson Tigers coverage. John, how you doing today?
Doing all right. I just got back from Clemson literally like 5 minutes ago. So just kind of bringing my mind back into focus here, but doing all right.
Well, hey, the Tigers have got 2 wins in a row, 3 wins in a row now?
4 wins in a row.
4 wins in a row. Okay, so
Yeah.
to have gotten their feet under them. I know that a lot of Clemson folks are like, we've lost 3 games. What's going on around here? Where, here in Columbia, if they had only lost 3 games, they'd be throwing a parade by the State House right now. But just from talking with the coordinators, the players, even Coach Swinney yesterday, John, what's the feeling over there? Do they feel like they've gotten everything settled and everything's going to be okay for this rivalry game?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That Wake Forest game was definitely the most complete effort they've had of the season thus far, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, that's been the bugaboo all year, is just whether this team can score points. I mean, the first 4 or 5 games of the season against FBS opponents, they couldn't break the 20-point barrier there. To get 48 in a game against Wake Forest, the top team in the Atlantic, obviously their offense was the strength of their team, not their defense. But to be able to get that sorted out, a lot of young players kind of coming into their own. I think they're feeling pretty good. But then again, David, I mean, this is probably a way more interesting matchup than we probably even thought at the beginning of the year, right?
Oh, absolutely, John. I mean, Clemson's won the last 6 in a row in this rivalry. Of course, that comes on the heels of South Carolina winning an unprecedented for them 5 in a row in the rivalry match. If you look back through the history books, the longest winning streak on either side in the rivalry is 7. That was set back during the World War II era. So obviously there were a few mitigating circumstances. But Clemson still has a chance to tie that record with a win on November 27th. So if you look at this matchup, John, I mean, there's all kinds of, buzz terms that have come across this year. Clemson's defense really good. Clemson's offense, not so much. South Carolina's offense, abysmal. South Carolina's defense, pretty decent. On the Clemson side, let's start with offense since it's really been going well. What has to happen to keep this offensive explosion kind of rolling coming into this game Saturday night?
I think it's all about running the ball. I mean, if you look at that performance against Wake Forest, I mean, they rushed for 333 yards. The two-headed monster, Will Shipley and Kobe Pace. Kobe Pace had 192, I think, if I'm doing my math off the top of my head right. I think it was 112. So I can't do math, but, for Will Shipley. But, being able to keep that going, I know South Carolina, just from hearing things kind of in the opening hours, I guess, of our analysis, what's going to happen on Saturday, that maybe the strength of their defense isn't stopping the run. So that is the main thing for Clemson, I would think, is that matchup right there in the trenches. Can they continue to run the ball like they did against Wake Forest, especially with the line kind of coming into its own? That's been a whole other issue for Clemson. Just only about 6 bodies that are, even healthy at this point. So, yeah, I would say that, running the football.
Absolutely. And, Clemson knows it has to run the football. South Carolina knows it has to run the football. And I think that's where the big matchup's going to be, John. From watching the Gamecocks all year coming into this season, they had 4 or 5 starters from the offensive line coming back. They had a 1,000-yard rusher in Kevin Harris coming back, which around here, 1,000-yard rushers are about as rare as, I can't even think of anything to compare it to. That's how rare it is. But it just hasn't happened for whatever reason. Maybe the schemes have been bad, the blocking's been bad. So USC's got guys to run the ball, but can they get some room to operate with that offensive line being as up and down as it has against Clemson's defensive line? How do you see Clemson's defensive front matching up against South Carolina's front 5?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Brian Brzez's been one of the biggest injuries of the whole year. I mean, that was potentially their best player on the defense. He's not there. But they've had some guys at defensive tackle really step up. I mean, Ruka Rororo has really come into his own, along with Tyler Davis, who's back. I mean, I don't know if you saw the one highlight from the game in Clemson, which wasn't even a tackle he made, but I mean, literally the big man, 300 pounds, sprints 50 yards with A.T. Perry, the receiver for Wake Forest, almost closes the gap on him. So some freak athletes there on that defensive line. I think that Clemson's just got dudes, and that was the whole difference with Wake Forest. I mean, Wake Forest was able to run that slow mesh, score a ton of points on people because they never had the kind of disruption that Clemson's defensive line was able to bring. So I think in terms of Clemson's defense, I mean, one of the strengths is that defensive line, even without Brian Brzee. So I don't know. I guess I haven't seen South Carolina. I mean, how do you feel about the offensive line against a unit that good, I guess, on the front?
Oh, John, it's weird because 2 of the last 3 weeks, it's looked really good. You know, I mean, against Florida, they came out and they were pushing guys around and opening holes and they were running through them, just getting a lot of yards right on the initial burst and then a lot of yards after contact. Well, after that Florida game, I'm sitting in the press box about to watch them play Missouri. And I'm looking at the Florida-Samford score, and I thought, Samford just put up 42 points on Florida in the first half. Carolina scored 40 on Florida all year. Maybe Florida's just not that good. Then I proceeded to watch South Carolina play Missouri, and they were just squashed at the line. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't do squat. Now, against Auburn the other night, the offensive line played decently well. It started getting going. They started giving the ball to Zaquandre White more, who was the number 1 back coming out of camp, and you see why he's the number 1 back. He's very shifty. He kind of sees the contact before it's coming, and if you give him just a second, just 1 second, he can get out there and really make something happen. So from that, John, I think that if you just discount the initial push, just try to keep them off of them for a second, they can get something going. Also, Kevin Harris, who was dealing with a back injury in the preseason, he's coming off his best game this year. He ran the ball hard against Auburn, and that's what they have to do, because if you have to force this into a passing game, it's going to be a long night for South Carolina. Absolutely long night.
Yeah, and Brent Venables was saying, as a football geek, he really likes what they do running the ball. So I mean, that's a lot of respect coming from the defensive coordinator at Clemson. To believe that they're actually doing some things that are innovative, some things that he's interested in. And I guess that brings me to Shane Beamer. I think that's probably something that Clemson fans and obviously South Carolina fans are invested in. I mean, what kind of coaching job do you feel like he's done? Because Brent Venables has been very complimentary. Dabo Sweeney has. I mean, everybody seems to think that Shane's done a pretty nice job in year 1. I mean, how would you gauge what he's been able to do with this program?
Well, you look at it, John, and they've got 6 wins right now. And I was sitting there thinking, there ain't no way they're going to a bowl in this year, not with the talent he inherited. But here they are. And it's actually kind of at the point of like, you know something? If they'd have had just some semblance of offense earlier in the year, they could be sitting on 8 wins right now. But that's one of those, like, that's an extreme thought, and saying, to get to 6 wins into a bowl game with this team is pretty amazing. And, if you're going to blame the head coach when things go bad, you got to credit him when things go right. Shane has constantly, from the time he walked in, said, hey, listen, it's not going to be a rebuild. We're looking to win now. And he believed in his guys. He mentions, love and family and togetherness all the time, which a lot of it is just coach speak. You see those words on the wall in the football building. The problem is that you see these kids interact with each other, how they don't get discouraged when they give up 45 points to Tennessee. They don't get discouraged when they give up 44 to Texas A&M and only have 15 yards of offense through 3 quarters. They still believe in each other. They still fight, and they're playing well. So they beat a team that up until last year, they had not beaten in nearly 90 years. And now it's 2 years in a row. And you start to see, it's like, maybe there's something to this all. I mean, the love and the family and togetherness. So Shane's been saying the same message all year. And, he's a guy that's been here before. He's not a newcomer to this rivalry. And when he was here from 2007 to 2010, He got the first two in that unprecedented 5-year winning streak in the rivalry against Clemson. So he knows what it's about. He knows how it's there. And, he's going to have his guys fired up to play. Now, there's going to be a huge talent differential. I think we all know that. But it's not always the talent that wins. It's just sometimes you're exploiting something that you can work. And after banging heads for 11 games against a lot of really good competition, particularly in the SEC, South Carolina's not going to be afraid. They're not going to be worried about what they're facing. But there is a case of like, well, as you said, Clemson's got some dudes and South Carolina's got some guys. Could they become dudes Saturday night? Absolutely. But they got to go do it.
Yeah. And one of those guys that I'm thinking about is, the quarterback, Brown. You have all these weird stories at quarterback, David. I mean, I'm just watching from afar here. You've got a grad assistant, you've got somebody from the FCS ranks, you've got all kinds of people playing quarterback. This latest quarterback, I mean, is this a guy that's a little different? I mean, do you think he brings something a little different to this team that could pose a challenge for Clemson?
He does, John. And just because, as I said a few weeks ago, when it was becoming apparent that he was going to start, it's nothing against Zeb Noland. And it's nothing against Luke Doty, who was hurt and is now out for the year. But with Zeb Noland, he's the guy that's not going to make a mistake. He's going to be in there. He's going to manage the game. Problem is, he can't move. And that's just the product of being 24 years old and being kind of a bigger guy. And now he's coming off knee surgery, so he really can't move. And with this offensive line, you just cannot put a statue back there. You can't. It's just going to kill you. So they had to put in Brown. They've gone with Brown. And his best attribute is that he can move out of trouble. They don't ask him to run the ball a lot on a design play. He's mostly a scrambler. I can make something happen. I can extend the play. But he rarely makes a bad read. He rarely makes a bad throw. Now, he did against Auburn. He threw a ball looking for, I think it was Jaheim Bell, in the middle of the field, double coverage at the goal line. And as soon as he let it go, I was like, oh, no, that's not. And sure enough, it got intercepted. But very rarely does he do that. He knows how to make some plays on the run. And if you want to go back and look, South Carolina's third touchdown against Auburn was one where he made that happen. He rolled left, out of pressure. And he's got Josh Vann cutting across the goal line, parallel. He threw it really kind of back across his body because he was running to the left and he's right-handed, right on the money. So you see that kind of thing happen. And it's like, Jason Brown, he came in, he was kind of overweight. He'd been sick. He really struggled to get some playing time, but he did everything he had to do. And now it's one of those, maybe that guy's just a gamer. He just plays better when the lights are on. And there's nothing to doubt that. He didn't have a great game against Missouri, but when the offensive line can't keep the pressure off of them, you're never going to have a good game. And what I wanted to ask you about, getting into the quarterback situation with DJ. I mean, he's had kind of a rough season, came in as a Heisman contender and just has not really been there. And now he's playing banged up. What are the injuries that DJ is dealing with? And how do you think South Carolina might be able to exploit that?
Yeah. So obviously he's got a brace on his right knee right now. And so that's something that Dabo Sweeney even yesterday said that, he's not going to be 100% for the rest of the year. I mean, he is not 100% of himself when it comes to that. And when it also comes to, maybe this is what he's also talking about, he's got a little splint on his index finger on his right hand, his throwing hand, which obviously you think would be a little bit harder throwing a football with something on that finger in particular. But DJ is one of those guys that you ask him about it and he says, oh, I'm fine, man. I'm cool. He's that California guy, just real chill. He doesn't really ever let any of that faze him. And honestly, just watching him, he's not 100%, not completely as mobile, but I saw him make some cuts off of that right knee. I mean, I do not feel like it, makes him a statue back there by any sense. They're not going to run him a ton, I don't think. I mean, I think that does change the calculus. Maybe if you're South Carolina, try to get him in some situations where you want him to take the ball and maybe he doesn't. You can kind of really anchor down on that running back. Maybe that makes it a little bit simpler, but he's not completely dead in the water, I would say. Obviously had a great performance against Wake Forest, a little banged up, but he seems to be working through it just fine from what I can tell.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that South Carolina has played a rivalry game against a quarterback on a bad wheel. And we all know how that one turned out. I believe it was in 2016. that it was. So it's it's not necessarily an advantage to be playing a hurt quarterback, but even so, the guy's a gamer. He's going to get out there and play. And plus, I mean, it wouldn't be among the realm of the impossible to think that Clemson's probably got something to make him feel a little bit better before he goes out there. But anyway, Clemson's got a lot of weapons. Their wide receiver core is usually one of the best in the country. But it's banged up coming into this game. What's the latest status on Joseph Ngata, and is it EJ Williams?
Yeah, EJ Williams. So yeah, EJ's funny. That's a funny story. Dabo was talking about in the press conference after the game on Saturday. He literally strained a muscle somehow, just shifting his alignment, like a wide receiver going out wide, getting lined up in the line, decides he's going to hop out another, 1 or 2 feet and get lined up. Literally, he said it was like sniper fire. He just went straight down. He's never seen anything like that before. So he was out. They kind of forced Will Sweeney to be the slot receiver. He had 2 freshmen and a walk-on in the slot. And but the hope is that he'll be back. That's what Tony Elliott said. He said hopeful. Doesn't know quite sure. Can't be sure 100% at this point. Joseph Ngata, the ideal timeline, what we heard coming in for his foot, was that it was probably going to be a couple weeks when he heard it. And so this is a couple weeks. I mean, it would be in line with what Dabo Sweeney was saying for him to be back. And Tony Elliott also grouped him in with the hopeful term in terms of him being back as well. So there is a chance that Clemson's receiving core is going to be stronger than it was last week. You got Joseph Ngata, who was leading receiver for a while back. Obviously Justin Ross still gone. But EJ Williams, Joseph Ngata, you got those 2 freshmen that just started. Will Sweeney doesn't have to play a snap if you don't want to, and that makes them a lot better in that phase. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, we'll see. But I think either way, I mean, they showed it last week. They can score points whether they're out there or not.
Tell you what, that Clemson defense, it's been great all year. I mean, held Georgia to 10 points and really only 3 considering they scored their 1 touchdown on the pick 6. James Skowski, the guy in the middle that makes it go. He's been there since 1993, something like that. I mean, the guy's been there forever, and he's always making plays. He's that guy in the vein of Ben Boulware, another guy that's been there since, I think, the 70s. I mean, those guys have just always been there in this rivalry game. What does South Carolina have to do to say, I mean, not take him out of the game, but say, look, you got to keep an eye on that guy and run away from him, preferably?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question because, again, you're just talking about if we're talking about South Carolina's offensive line having some issues blocking up front, I mean, you have enough to worry about just trying to get those front 3 guys at any given time. And then Skowski comes flowing in behind him, and he knows where everybody's going because, like you said, he's been around since the 60s or whatever. He's a brain. Dabo Sweeney said, he's basically like Brent Venables in a helmet out there. So it's I don't know how you deal with it. I mean, that's the thing that makes Clemson's defense as good as you said, alluded to with the Georgia game. I mean, did not give up a touchdown to the number 1 team in the country. And I guess that actually just makes me want to ask you a question. I mean, do we think this is going to be like a 7-6 game if South Carolina wins? I mean, how does South Carolina score enough points, to keep themselves in it? I don't know.
That has been the question, John, all year. It's just like, earlier in the year, Clemson struggling, South Carolina struggling. And I'm thinking, I'm already looking up rivalry scores like, well, there was a 6-3 game back in 1909. There's a 3-3 back in 1912. I mean, just all those old time scores, where the guys were wearing leather helmets and pretty much punching each other in the face on every snap. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, each team has shown the ability to score a few points lately. Clemson much more than South Carolina. But then again, Clemson also had the benefit of that UConn game in there. And nothing against Wake Forest or their performance, but as you said, Wake Forest known for its offense. Its defense has been terrible all year long. So that game wasn't a surprise to me that Clemson managed to destroy them as well as it did. I mean, I can see that South Carolina's defense has played extremely well this season for what it has. Clemson's defense has played well because they're real talented. Nothing against USC's talent, but it's just been like guys really dragging more out of themselves than you thought possible. And the 2 guys I can really highlight, Damani Staley, got a story running him in the paper tomorrow. He's a great kid. He's Deuce Staley's son. He's been on this team for 6 years now, but he's always just kind of been that guy that's there. Like, oh yeah, Staley's in the game. now he's having a really, really strong season. RJ Roderick and Cam Smith, guys in the backfield that's like, I mean, they're decent. They could become something. They're having really good seasons. And then, as I've said every week, All-American Jaylen Foster. Guy was a walk-on scout teamer 2 years ago. Transferred here from Gardner-Webb. He's leading the country in interceptions. I mean, he's just having a fantastic season. So when you have that kind of thing, you start to get a little confidence. But the confidence wanes if you got to be out there 45 minutes a game. And you've seen it all year from South Carolina. If their defense has to stay out there, they're just going to wear down. That's just what's going to happen. So South Carolina wants to turn this into that 6-3 game. They want that because it's like, hey, USC may not be scoring, but they're not scoring either. And if it comes down to who's got the ball last, South Carolina does have super senior kicker in his 6th year, who not only has only missed 1 kick all year, but he's going for the school career scoring record, and he only needs 4 points to get it. So they got that guy waiting for them. Clemson, of course, also has BT Potter, who is from Rock Hill, South Carolina. He went to another high school that we don't have to talk about right now, but he's really good too. So if this comes down to a field goal game, each team is prepared. The problem is it going to get there? And I know from the rivalry, I know from Tony Elliott, they're going to try to do something crazy first. You run back to kickoff, that's fine. That's not planned. But they're going to try some kind of double pass, trick play. I've seen it too many times because they like that MO. Put them in a hole early and make them try to come back. And I would do that too if I was facing South Carolina. So looking at the way Clemson's offense has struggled this year, John, do you see some kind of trick play coming out early? And if so, does that say they're really trying to get ahead and win this game? Or is it they're desperate and they don't know if they can win this game without tricks?
Yeah, that's interesting because they already kind of burned one last week, but that was a goal line situation type play. It was actually called Bayou, which was Travis Etienne's play, which was they bring in a jumbo package. They bring DJ out of the backfield. They direct snap to Shipley, throw pop pass to the tight end Davis Allen. That was fun to watch. So they've already burned one. Do they have another in the barrel? I mean, I think so. I mean, I've not seen any, like you said, like double reverse wide receiver passes or anything like that. I mean, it's perfectly plausible that maybe they do. And if they do, I mean, yeah, I think your reasoning's pretty sound. I mean, try to get up and not really keep this as a game for as long as, you can, because I mean, thinking about it myself, I mean, the key that I'm thinking of is just don't turn the ball over. I mean, I think if they can run the ball and they do not, hand South Carolina additional opportunities, and they can, on the other side of the coin, capitalize from time to time and taking the ball away and being opportunistic on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know how this game stays close. But if they turn the ball over, if DJ's like, flipping one to a linebacker accidentally on what should be an option read or something like that, then things could get interesting. So, but yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see kind of what the play calling is like if they try to get an advantage early, but I really think the advantage will come in who can it sounds simple, but execute and not turn the ball over and make mistakes.
It is something that you mentioned there, John, turnovers. Go back and look at the 5 games USC won in a row, specifically the turnover totals from the Gamecocks and the Tigers. I still remember the last one, 2013. I believe it was maybe tied or a 3-point game going in the 4th quarter. I'm sitting up there thinking, this is probably the one where it ends. I think that they got a little too much talent. They're going to wear USC down. Clemson drops a punt. USC goes in and scores, and I'm like, wow. I mean, you talk about a gift from heaven, So those are the kind of things that can happen. It's a weird rivalry. It's a strange rivalry, and that's just where it happens. My feeling is that South Carolina's got to show it can score something early because this defense is going to be fired up from Clemson. They're going to want to win this game. They want to shut up the home crowd. And that's one where, to me, if you're USC's play callers, you're pulling every trick you got. Everything you can, throw it out there, because if you don't do it now, when are you going to use it? I still remember the 1994 rivalry game, one of the best plays in rivalry history. Second half kickoff, USC had the lead. but they received the second half kickoff. Brandon Bennett ran forward 2 steps after the catch, throws across the field to Reggie Richardson. Reggie takes it nearly to the house. He tripped over his own man at the 6-yard line. That's why he didn't score. But the Gamecocks end up scoring that touchdown. They go on to win 33-7. So stuff like that, it can make a difference even if you have that much time. And speaking of time, we're almost out, John, but newcomer to the beat, newcomer to the rivalry. How long did it take you while you were down here before you realized the importance, not only of the football game, but of South Carolina versus Clemson as an everyday, every hour rivalry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know how I can best explain it. I mean, I knew a little bit covering IU, obviously, that IU Purdue was kind of was the thing up there, and I heard basically that South Carolina is IU and Clemson is Purdue, and they hate each other. And then I saw people saying, they won't marry a Gamecock or whatever if they're a Clemson fan, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of the worst things I've heard, but I've heard things. I've heard things, just people not liking the other side. Tony Elliott was saying today that, what was that? But Tony Elliott was saying today that, his sister is a Gamecock, and that it's actually his birthday this week. And that basically the only day that she's going to like him is on his birthday this week, because she's going to, obviously hate his guts because he's a Clemson offensive coordinator for the rest of the week. But his birthday, maybe Thanksgiving for a second. But it's a lot of stuff flowing from what I can tell.
Absolutely. And the good thing is it's close. You only got about a 2.5-hour drive down here. Let me give you some advice. When you're coming down 26, pull on to 77 and just keep going until you hit the shop road exit. That's the best way to get to the media parking lot, and will save you a lot of headaches. And you can get in 3 hours before kickoff. So I'm sure we'll hook up before then. But about out of time here, John. Obviously, we got the holiday coming up in a couple of days. The most important question when Thanksgiving comes around, rivalry aside, stuffing or dressing? What do you refer to it as?
It's stuffing. What do you call it? I mean, I can't think of any other name.
See, to me, it's 2 different things. Stuffing's all the spices and everything you put in the turkey when you bake it. Dressing is on the side. It's made out of cornbread or some kind of bread, and that's strictly on the side. It has nothing to do with the turkey. But if you actually pull it out of the turkey and then eat it, that's the stuffing.
Oh, well, I've eaten stuffing that wasn't in a turkey before, but I guess that would be breaking the rule. But no, I mean, obviously on Thanksgiving, the stuffing is in the turkey. So
there you go.
It fits the definition.
Very important question. And obviously, fried turkey versus baked turkey is another debate. I've had both. I like the fried better, but of course there's the problem of storing the leftovers, because you have some leftovers. But anyway, it's good to have a rivalry week back. You don't know what you got till it's gone. And, when they came out with that rule last year, even though the SEC was willing to let it go, or the SEC said, we can't do it, and the ACC was willing to, it was, wait a minute, there's no rivalry football game. How can you even have that, And of course, I was dealing with a coaching change. At the end of the 10th game, I thought, well, okay, I guess the season's over. But it's going to be a return to, I guess, the new normal. Williams-Brice Stadium for the second year in a row in a rivalry setting. Going to be a night game, bundle up. But Carolina Clemson back. And by the way, that is what I refer to it as instead of the Palmetto Bowl. I know lawmakers kind of adopted that, but to me, it's always going to be the Carolina Clemson game. Anyway, I'm David Cloninger. He's John Blau, Gamecocks Now, the Tiger Take, and the Charleston Post-Courier. We thank you so much for joining us all season. And we'll see you Saturday night at 7:30. John, you want to take us out?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Good to talk to you, David. Appreciate it. And we'll see you at the press box.
Take care, man. Give me a call if you got any problems.
Sounds good. All right, I'll see you.
Talk to y'all later. 7:30 kickoff Saturday night, Williams-Brice Stadium. The rivalry is back.